Okay, here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Let me make sure everything is loading and that we're live on all the platforms. And then we will officially begin. Everyone trickling in. Welcome. Good to see everybody. Just making sure. All right, we're definitely on the YouTubes. Or wait, no, is YouTube? Okay, YouTube is slowly loading. There it is. All right. Now, Rockfin, where you at? Rockfin right after. All right, that was really neck and neck, but YouTube won by a little bit. What's up, everybody? Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, and to everyone in the future, Australia, New Zealand, how's the future? Solve climate change. Let the rest of us know how it goes. Welcome to Get Your News On with Ron. This is the interview show for the week. And this show is a little bit different. So my guest today is someone who's been on my show before to just talk shop and to go through the headlines of the day. And I've also been on her show before. She has a wonderful show. But today we're doing something specific. And I got to give a shout out here. Shout out to user Aspen Fallen. Aspen Fallen requested that this segment happen. They said they wanted an episode with myself and Sabby Sabs, because we both have former lives as academics, to talk about the state of academia. So that is what we're doing today. My guest today is Sabby Sabs, and we're here specifically to talk about the state of academia in the United States. Sabby, what's up?
Hi, Ron.
Good to see you. So let's start out. Well, let's start out just kind of introducing ourselves a little bit here on the topic. So, what is your background in academia? I know you were kind of in that world until pretty recently, correct?
Correct. I worked as an academic advisor at Boston University and at MIT, and I left in January of this year.
Okay, so it's really recent for you. It's like
Mhm.
a couple months. You're still. Oh, this is a good time to have this conversation. Then you're probably still fired up about a lot, I'd imagine.
Yes, indeed.
Is there a reason you left? Like what was the reason?
There's a couple reason. Money was a big factor for me. We're just not paid well as academic advisors, but we're working long hours. Another part of it was I think the higher education system is on decline in the United States. It's just not what it used to be. It's definitely a profitable business. I don't feel that there's enough support for the staff. The support staff, I would say, not so much the high level administrators. And I didn't feel that there was enough support for the students either. It just seemed like if you weren't faculty, you really didn't get that support that you needed. So I've learned over the years that these universities are just a business basically, and all they care about is the money.
Yeah, I mean, I many times, both as a student and then being on the other end of it as an adjunct, kind of felt like this is just a big corporation with textbooks, or whatever the new incarnation of textbooks are. I but yeah, I mean, and to give everyone a brief, quick disclaimer on my own experience, I have served as an adjunct before. It's been a little while for me though. The last time I taught was 2015, I want to say. I kind of taught on the side while I was on the road doing comedy. And I always love to tell this story. At one point, they offered me a full-time job. They offered me, full-time adjunct work, and I turned it down. And the reason I turned it down is because being a touring stand-up was a little more fun. I enjoyed teaching, but being a touring stand-up was more fun. And B, and this is something I always clarify this too. At the time, I was an opening act. So I was not like a headlining act. I was an opening act, just driving around the country, performing at like comedy nights. I was not a draw. I was not anything like that. I was just an opening act at just commodity comedy nights. It would have been a pay cut to be a full-time adjunct teacher. Then you can make more money as an opening act comedian. That's messed up. I'm sorry. Like it's like, and I'm not saying. I mean, comedians should be paid more. We are grossly underpaid, but boy, our adjuncts. I mean, it's nuts. This stuff I saw, and this is even go back then. It's gotten even worse. It has gotten even worse. But let's get to your experience first here. So, Would you say like not enough support for well let's get into your job specifically. Like what were some of the demands and what is some of the inadequacies in compensation? You don't need to get specific with numbers or anything, but just like describe the overall environment.
So a lot of times, like academic advisors, we have a pretty large caseload of students, and you're expected to answer all of them. And I love the students. I have to say that the students were amazing. But I think the expectations that the universities have for the workload they give you is just not realistic. It got worse during the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of people quit. It got to the point where we were getting an email every week that someone was leaving. So they didn't replace those people. They basically just took their job, and those of us that were left, we had to pick up their work on top of the work we already had. No raise,
So
not getting
basically you
much
just got a
food.
bunch more students. Because
Right.
it's like you're an academic advisor and you have X amount of students, and so do all these other people. A bunch of people are quitting. So they're just, okay, well, we just got to divvy up these students and we'll just keep divvying them up and divvying them up. Oh, and by the way, there's a freaking public health crisis, there's a pandemic. So you got to navigate through that. Some students, they might be trying to get home, which might be a different freaking country. Some students,
Yep.
they don't know if they're going to do online learning or not. By the way, your workload's increasing. I I can't imagine why this wasn't pleasant for you. I mean, it sounds like a dream so far, but please continue.
So yeah, so our workload definitely increased. We were expected to work longer hours. You're getting emails sometimes 10 o'clock, midnight from faculty, and they would say you're not required to answer emails when you're not in the office. But if you didn't, then faculty would complain. So the expectation was there that you needed to respond and respond promptly. So that was an issue. Another ongoing issue I found, and this is particularly at the colleges here in Boston, they claimed they wanted to increase diversity, but they never took the steps or the initiatives to do that. So what would happen, they would hire like one black person in the office and they would just stop there and think that, okay, that's enough in terms of diversity. The student expectations were very high because these schools are incredibly, Boston University is incredibly expensive. So the students expect a lot. But if you're short staff, you can't get to everybody all the time. And so when the students' satisfaction score decreases, that is not good for the staff. It all comes back on the staff. They don't really care how you get the job done. They just want to make sure that you get it done. And if that means that you have to put in more time, you have to work on the weekends, they really just do not care. It's all about the money. And that for me, it's kind of similar to politics in a way, because it's like, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but higher ed is actually modeled after the United States government. There's a university president, there's a board of trustees, there's donors. And so everything is about making sure that the donors are happy. And people who donate to colleges here are pretty big name people. Bloomberg donates to Harvard. Robert Kraft also donates to Harvard. So you have to satisfy the donors. And if that means that you have to work as many hours as you can, that's what you have to do. And it just got to the point where I'm like, especially when we switched to remote work during the pandemic, I'm like, I have a life outside of this university. They didn't want to hear that. They would tell people to take vacation, but then when you would take vacation and you'd come back to work, then they would fuss at you because you weren't answering emails. Well, that's not a
Oh
vacation.
God, yeah. What? Oh, mm. I sometimes, yeah. I have not had a quote traditional day job in a very very long time, but my wife does have one, and sometimes in past positions, not where she's at now, but in past positions, she would get some of that, mildly condescending stuff when it was like her time off, and I would just get, oh, I would be like, you want me to drive over there? She's like, no, just shut up. I'm like, they shouldn't be able to do this. Capitalism sucks. And but anyway, so I think what you get at here is something else I wanted to bring into this, where it's like when you talk about how these universities, and this is a true systemic disease, they're not funded properly via the state. So they have to turn towards these private donors. And that's the predatory system that we have that puts, the student in crippling amounts of debt because you have to have, all these student loans to get a higher education. And usually you're in debt forever. And the other problem that creates on the academia side, as far as like the product that people are developing, this makes the student into a customer, so to speak. Whereas higher learning is supposed to be exactly about that, higher freaking learning, where it's
Yep.
like you're there to learn, you're there to be challenged intellectually, you're there to meet that challenge. And if you don't meet that challenge, well, then you don't pass. That's what it's
Mhm.
supposed to be about. But because you have this situation where it's like you're creating a demand for so many students because you have to get that tuition money. And then the students have this huge demand because they're in freaking debt, maybe forever.
Yep.
You create this very toxic environment where it's not about learning at all, where it's like, it's about, pleasing, quote unquote, the customer. And it's sometimes like you're really stretching it with these bullshit degrees that aren't actually going to do anything for a student. You're just making shit up about stuff like, oh yeah, this is common practice in the industry marketplace. No, these are ideas that will help you intellectually, that will serve you well in any job. And that's what the humanities are supposed to be all about. That's the point of it all. But instead, you're just sold this bullshit, these marketing gimmicks that put you in debt forever. And it's not the fault of the idea of higher education. The idea of higher education is absolutely great. It changed my freaking life. But because of the system, it's just poisoned.
Yes. Yes. A big problem is how they use the funds that come into the university as well. I mean, I was at the business school at Boston University. They had a gold elevator, like
Mm.
actual gold. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you can't give students more scholarship money. That's one of the big complaints that come from the students there. But you can buy a gold elevator door, putting money towards that. And we also need to talk about these bloated salaries that are at these universities. Like the president at Boston University makes over $2 million a year. You have deans there making six figures, way up into the high amounts in reference to salary. And so to me,
Well,
it's
and then
just
and then you have adjuncts who are literally houseless. I
exactly,
mean, so yeah, like there is
exactly.
corruption within the ranks, big time.
Right. And then the people at the bottom are making just barely enough to get by. Like the people who are support staff, academic advisors, we were not paid much. I don't know if everyone realizes that. We're not paid much, but you have the president making all this money. The deans are making a lot of money. And so you're basically just working there to keep their job, to keep them in power and in their position. Uh, it's incredibly corrupt. If you went to a sports university, like I went to the University of South Carolina, a lot of the money went towards athletics. Meanwhile, you have like dorms falling apart. You have classroom ceilings that are leaking water. There's mold in the classrooms, but they're putting the money towards the sports instead of fixing the academic environment that needs to be fixed. So I think that college to me has just become a corrupt business. And I highly recommend to people watching that are thinking about going to a traditional university, I recommend that you go to school outside of the United States. If you can go to school in Germany where college is free, I recommend that you do that because it was really painful for me to see so many students graduate with loads of student loan debt, and they would get job offers where they wanted to offer them like $45,000 a year. And I'm like, there's no way they're going to pay off these student loans. If you can't go to school abroad, I recommend that you use some type of alternative university platform. A good one, like if you want to go into tech, is General Assembly. It's all online, it's a lot cheaper. Max is probably 2 years, and you don't have to take all these BS classes that keep you there for 4 years. But I think people need to start looking into alternatives because universities are not going to get cheaper. The tuition is going to continue to increase.
And that's just such a tragedy of it all. I mean, that is just such the tragedy that it's like they are, and it's been on this path for a very, very long time, but it has gotten infinitely worse just within the past 10 years. I mean, just within like, and from when you and I were in college, even, it has gotten way worse since then. So we've all seen it get progressively worse. And it is to the point now where higher education in this country is becoming solely reserved for the elite, which is
Yep.
literally a component of fascism, by the way. Like, that's literally one of the components of fascism: make education reserved for the elite. and nobody else. So it's like
Mhm.
we're amidst it all. And you have this corrupt to the gill system in general. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I try not to say this too often because it really makes me sad to admit, but it's like my wife and I are unsure about children. But one thing we are sure on is if we decide we do want children, we have to move,
Mm.
like out of the country move. I'm not going to raise them here. And there's a long list of reasons for that. But one of the reasons is I don't want them, if they want to go to college, they're going to be in debt for the rest of their freaking lives. I don't want that for them. There's a lot of other things I don't want too. There's a long freaking list. But when you add them all up, I'm just like, yeah, I'm not gonna. We're gonna have to move abroad if we want kids, and I hope that changes. I really do. I don't know if it will, but that's kind of where I'm at. And college is one of the things. I mean, it's just remarkable when you look at and even if you are a United States citizen, you still like tuition is so much cheaper.
Yep.
And when you factor in even just the cost of getting out there and your cost of living while you're there, it's still infinitely cheaper than taking
Yep.
on just obscene amounts of student loan debt.
No, it's incredibly true. And I want people to understand how the student loan companies are in business with the universities and the United States government. So Sally Mae actually came to my school and they were doing a project with some of the students. And one of the representatives from Sally Mae said, "Oh, don't worry, guys. We have a representative on the Hill that makes sure that companies like us stay in place." Said that to my students. That was not a good statement to say to them. And that's when I realized that all
We
of this
would
is
be
connected.
horrible if we could.
Yeah, it's just this is all connected. The United States government, this is why they won't cancel student loan debt. Also, this is a big recruitment tactic for the United States military is the free college, right? So that's one reason why they don't want to get rid of student. They don't want to give you a free college. That's another reason. Also, they're in business with these student loan companies. The universities don't want to give you more scholarship money because they're in business with these student loan companies. All of them are connected. And so when you see where the money is going at these universities, if people actually saw the numbers I saw, they would be livid.
The sad thing too is that universities, even like somewhat recent, were kind of seen as sort of a haven in the United States, where it's like if you didn't want to go the corporate route, well, that was your alternative. If you wanted a reasonable work-life balance in comparison, that was generally seen as an alternative. I mean, that was kind of the common thing. I mean, and like I come from a family of academics where that was still the case, like for
Mhm.
my parents, that was still the case where it's like, hey, universities, they don't pay a ton of money, but you get a lot of decent benefits and you have a better work life balance. That used to be the
Yep.
case. It really did. And I'm sure in some situations it still is, but it's becoming the exception when it used to be the rule. And it's because of all these predatory things that we're talking about.
Right. And you have to pay attention to the donors, you guys, because I can tell you, I know when Cornel West announced that he was leaving Harvard because they wouldn't give him tenure. Well, that was over the Israel and Palestine crisis, right? So who funds Harvard? Like this is why I say it's all connected. Like the talking points that Harvard wants to hear is pro Israel. It's not going to be pro Palestine. So they really wanted to shut Cornel West up. Well, let's shut him down. Do not give him tenure because he's in support of Palestine. Jeffrey Epstein donated to MIT. A lot of people don't know this. So some people will go in as anonymous donors, but it gets leaked. People find out eventually anyway. And you have to understand, I used to think that college was more of like a free spirited kind of place where you find yourself. But colleges, from my experience as an employee, are actually pretty conservative.
Oh, yeah.
That's the line that they take, especially the business model. They're pretty conservative, and a lot of it has to do with the people who are donating money to those universities. Like they'll pull their money at any time. Alan Questrom, who is a huge donor to Boston University, and that's why the business school was named after him, Questrom School of Business. He did not renew his donorship. last year. He donated over $50 million to the university. He is a very avid Trump supporter. He's been on Fox News multiple times supporting Trump. And so you have to realize, like, when you hear the talking points that you hear come from the university, you really have to look and see who's donating money to these schools. So that's a big part of the problem, similar with politics.
Oh yeah, I mean it's all the parallels are so just blatantly apparent, and when you like really strip it down, I mean, look, when I was in college, was I exposed to some amazing ideas that changed my life? Yes, absolutely. But it's like you got to dig for it, and quote unquote radical academics, they're few and far between to the point where you could kind of just have all of them on your show within a couple weeks if you wanted to. I mean, they're still out there, but they're few and far between, and you kind of wonder if they're going to get the axe at any minute. Like I've had Gabriel Rockhill on my show, a guy who identifies as just an open communist. He's in the PSL, and it's just like, how often do parents complain about you, dude? How often, like, are you sure you're okay saying all these things on my show? The wrong person might see this, and it's pretty crazy. And since you brought up the Cornell West thing, I want to get your take on this. There's a certain um I don't know what the right word for it. I don't know if pretentiousness is the right word for it. But one thing that I've always noticed, and maybe you've noticed some of this too, there's a certain amount of disdain within academia and within especially like faculty towards someone who kind of goes that extra step and starts to connect with regular people, like a Cornell West, like a Noam Chomsky, like Chris Hedges. There's a certain kind of disdain for those types of thinkers, where it's like almost like they're like it's almost like the it's almost like they're a bunch of punk bands and you got played on the radio, like that kind of thing.
Yep.
Like there's almost just this whole like, oh, you're not just being read by five of our friends anymore in an academic journal no one's heard of. Whatever. It's because your work's not great. Regular people. And it's just like, no, because if you can't communicate your ideas without having it dripping in words of jargon that mean nothing. Like I know in academia, hey, if you could say something in 2 words, say it in 12. It means you're smart. No, it doesn't mean you're smart. It just means you've absorbed that shit like a sponge and you can regurgitate it like a freaking drone. And you definitely had some advisors, not academic advisors, I'm talking faculty advisors. You had some faculty advisors who didn't want colleagues. They wanted fucking minions. So you go up there with your quote original paper where you just spit their book out at them and they come in their pants. And this isn't intellectual curiosity. This is a freaking circle jerk of bullshit. And I am wasting my time on a fucking Friday afternoon. Sorry, Sabby. I'm reliving some of my grad school days. I didn't mean to subject you to all this.
No, no, it's true. They don't like for them to venture outside of academia. They really don't like when they start trying to connect with the people. And I want to remind everyone that Cornell West, remember, he worked on Bernie Sanders' campaign, and Michael Bloomberg also was running for president. And Bloomberg heavily funds Harvard University. There's even a program named after him. So he really wasn't in the right mix there. Like, it's the message and everything wasn't in the right mix. The students love Cornell West, absolutely
Mhm.
love him, but Harvard University administration and the powers that be, they do not like that type of rhetoric. They don't want to hear that billionaires and millionaires need to pay more money. They don't want to hear that. They're like, no, that's us. So
Mhm.
you're telling us to like pay more money. So I think that, again, it all goes back to the money. And I hope people really understand that. And in reference to faculty, if you're watching this and you're thinking about becoming a professor, I would say look for another option because a lot of these universities are not hiring tenure track faculty anymore. They're doing like what Ron was telling you about. They're hiring adjunct faculty because they don't have to give them benefits. They don't have to pay them as much. So the whole tenure thing, I think that's starting to go away. I give it like 10,
Oh, big
15 more
time.
years.
I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right. I think 15 might even be a little high. I think we might be talking more a decade. But yeah, you are 100% right. I did my graduate degree at Duquesne University in Pittsburgh. Now that is supposed to be it is supposedly kind of like the working class university. That's like kind of how it's historically been known over the years. They had an adjunct. I believe she taught French, but it might have been Spanish. And I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't remember what language she taught. She was beloved by the students. They loved her. She died, and they found out she was living in her car. She was a full-time adjunct. They paid her so low. She was living in her car near campus. She would grade papers with a little lantern that she had in her car. And no one had to answer for this. No one had to answer for this. A full-time educator teaching a freaking language. I mean, and I would see it in the freaking break room. Now, for me, I was just teaching on the side when tour dates were slow. For anyone that wants a little peek under the hood of the world of road stand-up comedy, sometimes during the summer, dates are a little slow, so you're not working as much. So sometimes like someone will get like a summer job or something like that. For me, I taught a couple classes in the summer. And it was a lot of fun actually. But I would see people in the break room where I often got mistaken for a student, and I'm kind of proud of that. They tried to kick me out of the faculty lounge a couple times, and I was really proud of that. They're like, "Are you a?" I'm like, "I'm an instructor, motherfucker. I belong here." But anyway, um, I I would see people like they would be doing the math, and they would find out like they're not even breaking even. Because they're just like between paying for, pressing by coats and commuting between campuses and doing all these other things. They're like, I'm like losing money to do this job. It is
Yep.
insane. Like it is absolutely absurd. As of the recording of this, I don't know if you saw it the other week, but there was that position at UCLA. They've since taken it down. But they were apparently looking for some kind of like assistantship thing, and it was unpaid.
Yep.
It was a job they were looking for that was straight up unpaid, and it's not listed anymore. They took it down. I didn't look into all the details of that story, so I can't speak to it. But yeah, like that circulated online. Also at the University of Florida, they decided to take out a thing dedicated to Marx, and it's because of Russia. It's because of
Yep.
Marx, who is German, spent a lot of time in London. They're saying, well, he's communist, right? And that's Russia, right? Well, no, actually, they're a bunch of capitalists. Putin's a capitalist, but yeah. So that was their logic at the University of Florida right now, and they took down a thing of Marx, because the conflict right now is his fault. He hasn't been dead for a while or anything like that. It's like it's nuts, and this is in higher education. This is where they're supposed to stand up to that type of bullshit. That's where you're
Yeah.
supposed to go to academia to hear the people who are saying, you know what? If you think dumping out Russian dressing is some kind of a statement, you just look like a freaking idiot. All right, cut it out. Um,
Mhm.
that's where you're supposed to go for those types of ideas. That's where you're supposed to go for the types of ideas that go. It's like, hey, there's imperialists on all sides here, and they're all doing bad things, and they're all the bad guys. That's where you're supposed to hear that in academia. Instead, you're hearing the same fluff that you hear from the corporate media in a lot of cases. I mean, it is
Yeah.
straight up frightening.
Yes, no, it's true, and there are adjunct faculty on welfare.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't know if everyone's, like, aware of that, but there are adjunct faculty on welfare because they just can't they're not paid enough, and they still need to get food and housing and all of that stuff, so the story that, Ron just told you is not surprising to me, and I think we also need to talk about the stipend that goes to PhD students at this school. It's incredibly low. So while we have
Oh,
students here in Boston, Massachusetts, they have to have a stipend because they can't work. Like, as PhD, it's full time. They have to have time to do the research. So they work a lot of hours as a PhD student. And you have students here, and the stipend is like $33,000 a year. That's nothing in
yeah.
Boston.
Well,
Absolutely nothing.
let me jump in real quick here, and just to qualify too, in case anyone isn't aware, although I'm sure most people already are. But you're also, it's not like you're just given this stipend to live because, oh, you're a student and you're doing, you're also giving something back. You are a
Yeah.
research assistant to someone on faculty. You are, in most cases, you're teaching a course or two. So it's not like this stipend is just like, oh, you're gonna live while you do like no, you have a position. And yes, your position does involve being a student too, but you also have a position within
Yep.
that university, and they count on your labor to make the university happen. If you're not teaching that freshman course, no one else is either. They're counting on you to fill that position. That's why there's only so many assistantships available in every department. So just to
Yep.
clarify there.
It's a way for universities to have cheap labor. So they work a lot with those faculty members on their research. That helps, I mean, in reference to publications, because their name will be added to the research too. But you're talking 5 to 7 years, you're poor. And it's incredible. Like, I've had students, like, we would do events, always give food at the events, because that's really how you get them to come to these events. But I would have students, like, they would come to the events and they would take food to go because they didn't have enough money to buy food. So this is like, it's crazy. Meanwhile, the faculty member that they're doing a research assistantship for, they live in like a 5 bedroom house like down the street, and they're making like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And they use these students for cheap labor. Sometimes these students would be in the research labs till like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and they still have to go to class the next day.
Yeah, no, it's nuts, and you know, I guess it's like dependent on the department and the situation in the school, but I definitely know a lot of faculty members who are not getting anywhere close to those salaries either. I mean, there's a lot of faculty, you know, like throughout the country, like they're getting screwed over too, and they're getting. I mean, in some cases, they're paying people hourly, and again, we're talking salaried at this point, like not
Yep.
even just adjuncts. But I know a lot of people, or like they get denied tenure when they should have gotten it, and they get
Yep.
denied for like the most bullshit of political reasons. Um,
Yes.
and again, yeah, it just goes into the system when you have a system set up like this way, where it's just a dog eat dog system. It's funded in a completely corrupt and morally disgusting manner. You know, that kind of corruption, that's where you get the quote trickle down. That corruption trickles down. And it's to the point where, like, you know, the head of a department might screw over a faculty member if that faculty member expects the students to read before class. Hey, we're here to please the customer. Shut up about all this reading stuff. Just make sure they get the A's so they shut up and they're happy. And by the way, you ain't getting tenure. And all these things I'm
Yep.
bringing up, I've seen all of this happen. So if you're thinking like, Ron, that's it's not that bad. You're embellishing a little. No, I am not. That's some of the shit I lived through in my limited exposure. I've been around this a lot less than Sabby has, but I saw this just in my time as a graduate student and my limited time adjuncting. That's some of the shit. I can only imagine the stuff I would see had I stuck around or been around for a while.
Yes, no, it's true. If you don't move the way that they want you to move, yes, they will deny you tenure. Like, people have to like you. It's supposed to be just
Yeah.
based on your research, but I've seen them do that to faculty too. They're just like, oh, they push the envelope a little too much, so they don't like that, so they're not going to give them tenure after they've worked at this university for all these years. It's just so corrupt. And I just wish like more people knew that. Like, it's just such a for-profit system, and it's all they care about is the money. And I hope people like fully like understand that, because even the students would have complaints sometimes, and they would just tell them like, well, you just got to suck it up and stay in the game. And it's terrible. And I wish that some of these universities would give out more scholarship money, instead of like having these students take out so much money in financial aid and like these student loans, because it just follows you wherever you go. And we are not living in a time right now where a lot of these students can pay back their student loans because they're not making the salaries to do so. It's crazy. And housing prices have increased. So these kids are graduating from schools like Boston University. They can't buy a house. They can't get married. They can't start families because they have so much student loan debt. But they went to a prestigious school.
Hmm. Well, and I think a lot of people don't realize too that if we had free college in this country, if we made colleges tuition free, if they were properly funded by the state, a lot of these other problems, these kind of inner problems that you and I have brought up, which are very real and very apparent and very just in the face of everyone, a lot of those would start to go away too, because it's because of the system that they exist in the first place.
100%. And I think that I really encourage students to go to community college. It's a lot cheaper. Yes, you can have a career with an associate's degree. Some of those careers pay more than the careers that require a bachelor's degree, to be honest. But I really wish people would focus more on community colleges. Some of these college alternatives, like General Assembly, Academy, or Launch Academy is another one. Focus more so on the alternatives because I'm telling you from experience, it's not worth it with the student loan debt that you're going to inquire. But I think that if you don't have to take out student loans, if you don't need like financial aid, then go ahead and go that traditional route. But I think that the colleges also, they're not teaching students the things that they need to know to be successful in the workplace. They're not getting that hands-on experience. A lot of times they're just memorizing things that they've read in this book so that they can pass a test. And a lot of these
Mhm.
kids, they go into the workforce, they don't know where to start, they don't know what to do, and they need to bring that back. They need to give people that hands-on experience. And I don't think that students should have to apply for all these internships because sometimes those are unpaid just so that they can get that experience. I think the universities are failing in that way. And I think that some of these universities also, they need to get rid of these degrees that offer no career path anymore. I've seen some of the small liberal arts colleges here in Massachusetts close as well as Vermont because you can't do anything with it. Like what are you going to do with a history degree? What are you going to what career path is that going to lead you? Like I just but the universities don't care because they take the money. They just want the money. They don't care if you actually find a job when you graduate. They just want the money. They give you your degree and then you're on your own.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really, really tragic. Like it's just so freaking tragic that it's gotten to this point. That it's gotten so like again, I mean, so much worse just since I was in college. Like it's gotten so much freaking worse to the point where it's like I agree with everything you just said, but I really don't want to. You know what I mean? Like I
Mhm.
don't want that to be the reality. I don't want it to be the reality where it's like, oh, maybe you want to go to school just because you want to expand your mind. Maybe you don't really know what you want to do yet. And you're going to kind of discover that because you're going to be introduced to ideas that maybe you weren't aware of yet. And maybe you're going to find out, gee, I want to be a literature professor. I want to be, I want to study this or whatever. And you want to go that route, which is a great route to be an educator or whatever. But it's like, but then you're trying to do it in this disgusting, corrupt system. And you can kind of connect it to journalism. Um, Good journalism exists in the United States despite the system, not because of it. And I think overall, at least in the humanities, I can't speak for like other departments. I know it's a little different when you get into the sciences and stuff like that, but in the humanities, good academics exist despite the system, not because of it. I mean, I remember when I was teaching, they gave you this like criteria you were supposed to follow. And I followed none of these rules. I didn't even like I was this is the most ridiculous thing I ever saw. Like I looked at this and I was just like, I'm sorry. I thought I was teaching college. This looks like I'm supposed to be teaching first graders. This is insulting. Where you're supposed to you have to memorize this and then the exam will but what do you, it's a good idea. I taught public speaking. It's a good idea to make eye contact. Like I'm like, look, they're not going to be better speakers at whatever job they have if they can regurgitate what's in this trite textbook. They're going to be better speakers if they guess what? Frickin' speak. So at the beginning of every class, we did spar debates. They didn't get to pick if they were affirmative or negative. I assigned it. If it didn't match up with their ideology, I didn't give a shit. I was like, this is an exercise. This is an intellectual challenge. You either rise to the challenge or you don't. And you each got 90 seconds. And I'll tell you what, those kids, they were a hell of a lot different speakers by the end of the semester. And I mean, I think we opened the textbook one time. There was one thing I wanted to point out to them, and that was it. And you know, it ended up working. I mean, like they liked me, but yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Um, what we're we're just neutering the idea of higher learning. And it breaks my freaking heart.
Yeah, and another way they try to get more money too, I'm glad you mentioned textbooks because some professors will make it so that students cannot order those textbooks online where it's cheaper sometimes, like getting them from Amazon. Sometimes it's just a lot cheaper that way. They'll make it to where you can't do that, where you have to order this, you have to buy this course pack and it has to be through their website. And I've had students tell me, like, I can't afford to purchase all these course packs. And that's another thing, is just a reality. Like, that's the problem, I think, for a lot of the students that are first generation college students, first ones in their family to go to college, that are there and have taken out a lot of like student loans, do not have any assistance paying for their college from their families. A lot of times they get there and they may be there just for their freshman year and then they don't come back because they just can't afford all the other expenses that go along with college. Like, why does the student have to order the course pack from your website? Why can't the students, you can't copy them either? Because what some students will do, one person will pay for it and they'll go and make copies at FedEx. That's actually against the policy. So it just, they make it so that you have to spend the money and it has to be done through the university. And it's so corrupt.
Yeah. Well, and that was another thing when I was in graduate school. Like I did you would hear like, well, it's probably best to just get the most recent edition
Yep.
because you want to be. I'm like, oh, really? Our pages are going to be a little off, so I should spend $100 more because I can get this used thing from the last edition for 99 cents online. You know what I did, Sabby? I actually no. We'll do it this way. Guess how much I spent on textbooks my entire grad school career? 2-year
Mm,
degree. Take a guess.
800,
Lower,
500,
lower. One more guess.
300.
$30. I should know.
How?
Anyway, it'd be funny if I just moved on from there and I didn't tell you how. But yeah, I'll tell you how. So first of all, I had library cards to every single library in the city. Now, this is Pittsburgh where I grew up. It is a big college town. So I had access to every university library. And I would use that, and then I would get the book, and then I would just renew as much as I could, or I would get a different edition and then renew that. So I was able to keep it for the entire semester. And by the way, I shared with some of my colleagues. So I was not just, hogging this all for myself. I was happy to share as much as I could. Um, and then what I would do is I would, older editions, you would find it online for like 99 cents versus the newer one that was like $100 more. And the pages were different, were a little different. And there was a foreword written by, some idiot who I didn't give a shit about. We didn't read it anyway. So that's what I would do. And the one thing I did have to buy was this one textbook for a quantitative class I had to take, but I found it from a student who took it a semester before me. They just wanted $20 for it. So, yeah, when all was said and done, $30. I was really proud of that. So it can be done, but you got to be really thrifty and really clever. And when they try to upsell you, like, well, technically, you just piss off, piss off. But I'm going to be writing a paper. You're not going to know I'm not using the most new edition. Get bent. Have you ever seen this? Do you ever see? This should just be freaking illegal. I'm sorry. Do you ever see professors that assign their own book?
Yes.
Oh my God. Well, that was the other thing I did. There were a couple professors that were notorious for doing that. So you just, someone in your program who took it the year before you, they would just like load them to you. And you would just pay it forward by like hooking them up with something or buy the dinner or whatever. And they'd be like, yeah, I still have these because I haven't thrown them away yet. Like, so so yeah, I mean, it's such a racket. It's such a racket. And yeah, you totally shouldn't be able to assign your own book. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. If you can't lecture from your book and have other source materials, you have no business teaching whatever that class is. I don't give a shit.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think one thing to mention too is the pressure that admissions has. There's a lot of pressure on them to get those numbers up every year. Obviously, during the pandemic, our numbers fell quite a bit because some students just couldn't come back to the United States once they went home. But there's a lot of pressure on them to get those numbers up because, again, that's how university makes a lot of their money. And what we've seen over the years is that there is a decline. More and more high school students are choosing to do alternatives or just not going to college at all. There's also a site called Coursera. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but you can take classes on Coursera from MIT and Harvard for free.
Mhm.
And so that's why I tell people look online at some of these other resources. Like, why pay to do it if you can do it for free?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, like, these we need a systemic shift or otherwise it's like it is just going to go the way of the buffalo slow but surely. Because I mean, the system is completely in decline. It has reached a point of absurdity beyond comprehension, and
Mhm.
people just aren't taking it anymore. And you know, I mean, the one thing it's like we've described, if we're not going to have a systemic change in this country, which is what I would like to see happen. I would like to see, you know, like free college. I would like to see like everyone who wants an opportunity to have higher education to have it. And I would like higher education to be a respectable institution of higher learning, the way it once was and could be again, but certainly hasn't been for a very long time. I would like to see that. But if we're not going to see that, well, you know, you and I just went through a couple alternatives. Try to go to school abroad. Try to, you know, and by the way, once you get there, try to fricking stay there. Start a life there. You
Yeah.
know, look into some of these alternative ways of learning, some of these free courses that are out there. The other thing too, these vocational opportunities. There's all you get a good apprenticeship as an electrician, you're set for life. Same with being a plumber, a mechanic. I mean, man, one of my cousins, you know, when I was in college, you know, like having a good time, don't get me wrong, but I was in college, he was already making 60K a year as a mechanic. He got
Yep.
an apprenticeship when he was 18. By the time he was 19, he was making 60K a year at the same shop he did his apprenticeship in. And because everyone liked him, they had a spot for him. He stuck around. He's still there.
Yeah.
And
A
he
lot of
loves what he
people,
does.
yeah. I mean, some people look down on those jobs, but those jobs pay pretty well.
And why would you look down? I mean, that's so why would you if your car freaking breaks down, you're gonna look down on the person who fixes it? Those people, they're poets, man. I mean, that's amazing to me. You know, this is one of like my regrets in life. Kind of, I had a temp gig, right? I was just working in an office, and it was actually at a university, um, and I was near the motor pool for campus, and so like it was a bunch of mechanics who worked there, and they were really cool guys. And they were like, dude, Ron, just at the end of your shift, if you got like 20 extra minutes, just come by and we'll just teach you stuff. We'll just show you stuff, you know, a few minutes before you leave. And I was like so set, but I was always a little busy and I just didn't have time. And I was like, dude, eventually I'm going to have a little more free time and I'm going to just kind of pop in. And they were willing to teach me. But then I lost my job. So so I was never able to. My contract ended, and I was like, "God damn it! I'm not. That's another opportunity lost. I might know how to change oil right now, Sabby, but no."
Yeah,
So,
I recommend people look into those fields. Carpentry, construction, like Ron was saying, electrician, like we need those people.
and there's always going to be a need for. I mean, so when I was in high school, I worked at a funeral home for a while, and like people who learn embalming, which that's like a whole apprenticeship situation and stuff like that. I know that that is not for everybody, and I get it. But if you do that kind of work, like either just straight up like funeral home director or an embalmer, I knew a guy, he was an embalmer and he was like just a freelance dude. He would just work nonstop, and it was because he liked it this way. He would work nonstop for about 9 months a year until he made 90K. Which in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, 90K goes a long freaking way. It goes a long freaking way pretty much anywhere, but you know, in a cheaper city, that goes a long way. And he was a pretty simple guy. He didn't have a lot of expenses, so he would just work for the year until he made 90K. And then once he hit that, he was like, "Okay, I'm done." And the rest of the year, he would just do whatever the hell he wanted. He'd go travel somewhere. He would just sit at home, go to sporting events, whatever it is he liked to do, whatever it is he wanted to do. And that was how he lived his freaking life until he died.
Wow. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, I want people to understand that, like, how I guess I should say guilty, how guilty the military industrial complex is with all of this. Because
Mhm.
part of the reason why we don't have health care for everyone, part of the reason why they don't want to cancel student loan debt is because those are benefits for people to join the military. And if you give Americans those things, well, then military recruiters don't really have much to say when they go into like these low income neighborhoods, because that's usually where they recruit people. They don't have much to offer to those high school students to get them to join the military. And so I think the military industrial complex has a lot to do with this. I know also big pharma as well, but I think sometimes that piece is it gets lost. The people don't realize just how many benefits, because my dad was in the military, just how much you get when you join the military.
Mhm. So, anything you want to say in closing on this topic before we kind of sign off here? I feel like we covered a lot.
Absolutely. If you want to go to a traditional 4-year university, I recommend that you do so abroad in a country that has free college. They do take Americans at those schools, just
Mhm.
FYI. And then, other than that, look into trades, look into vocational schools, look into some of these alternatives that are online for college courses that you can do for free.
Sabby, where can people go to learn more about you?
Definitely. You can find me on Twitter. My handle is at SabbySabs2. And my channel's on YouTube. It's called Sabby Sabs. I'm also on Rockfin as well.
Well, thank you for doing this. I was real excited when Aspen Fallen suggested this, and I was really glad that you were down for it as well. This was a lot of fun. I don't really revisit this part of my life too often, so thanks for doing it with me and sharing your insight.
Thanks so much, Ron.
Good seeing you as always. See you soon. Peace.
Bye.
Sabby Sabs, everybody. Go follow her on Twitter at Sabby Sabs too, and of course, check out her YouTube channel. I've been a guest on there. It's a lot of fun, and she does a wonderful show. And this was really cool to kind of get out of our yeah, do something a little different. Have a different type of chat. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I hope it was interesting. Let me go to the chat here. Lucky Burrito, thank you so much. Hope all is well. Thank you for the rainbow. We need more rainbows. You know, it rained in my neighborhood. It doesn't rain here all that often in Southern California, but it rained recently, and there were a lot of rainbows overlooking the ocean there, and it was a pretty special thing, you know. M4A now, what's up? Any info you learn at college can be learned for free online. MIT posts its course online. You can do the exact same curriculum, but without the degree. Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about that. I think Sabby gave that a shout out. And yeah, that's the truth. You know, these degrees are what people are paying for, but in reality, the knowledge is very accessible. I mean, we have more. I mean, that's the weird thing about the situation we're in. They are strangling higher education to no end. But in the meantime, we're in a time in our humanity where there is more just knowledge available at your fingertips than ever before. I mean, isn't that a weird kind of yin and yang to be in? You know what I mean? Like it's just bizarre when you think about it, and it's a bit overwhelming, you know. And where it's just like now, I mean, I could just with a type in a search bar start learning a new language, like right now. I use an app, Duolingo, to help me with Italian, right? And this is, I mean, obviously, I'm not getting a degree, and I'm not looking for one. I'm just trying to get better at the language, but you know, it's it's an interesting time. It really is, and it's a bit overwhelming at times. It really is. In a good way and in a bad way, if that makes sense. Red Pill, what's up? Good to see you. It's been a while. You say love, peace, freedom, happiness. Abso-frickin-lutely. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your super chat contributions. You help keep the show on the air. And guys, if you want to support this show on a sustainability end, patreon.com/Ron Placone. For a give what you can level, you get all kinds of cool perks. You get full stand-up clips not available anywhere else. I'll make you a theme song. I do Zoom shows just for patrons, and I drop all of my regular stuff there too. I know that things are scattered. I know that people are getting unsubscribed. My editor, Joe, texted me. Joe helps me with my editing. He edits some of the clips, and he makes the thumbnails. He had to resubscribe to this channel. He's one of the moderators of the channel. He had to resubscribe 3 times in the past week. They keep unsubscribing him. They're unsubscribing him. So yeah, I know people get unsubscribed. In fact, if you don't mind, if you get the show from YouTube, check and make sure you're subscribed every now and again, and you'll probably need to resubscribe at some point. But please do check that. But yeah, on my Patreon, I drop everything. I just drop everything that I put out. I drop links to it. So it's an easy place to just get everything. And it's for a give what you can level. Even $1 a month goes a long way. So if you got an extra $1 each month that you won't miss, please do consider it. Patreon.com/RonPlacone. Tour dates, I got them. Don't wait. Get your tickets. Next month, April, kicks off April 16th. I'm going to be in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's Saturday night, Pittsburgh. I want to see you. If you're a graduate student, I'll show you how I only spent $30 on textbooks at grad school. So come on out to Pittsburgh. Toronto, April 18th, April 19th, Ottawa, April 20th, Montreal. Or wait, no, I'm sorry. April 18th, Toronto. April 19th, we're off. April 20th, Ottawa. April 21st, Montreal. April 22nd, Burlington. April 23rd, Portland, Maine. April 24th, Boston, Massachusetts. I hope Sabby's going to be there. I should have mentioned that to her. April 25th, New York. So again, that's Pittsburgh, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Burlington, Portland, Boston, New York. Get your tickets at ronplacone.com. Don't wait. Also, Iceland. I'm going to be in the Reykjavik Fringe Festival. That's happening in late June, early July. As soon as I know more info on that, like when my showtimes are, I will be posting it. But for now, mark your calendars. Iceland, I'm going to be at your Fringe Festival, and I can't wait to see you. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Again, Lucky, M4A Now, and Red Pill, thank you so much for the Super Chat contributions. Check out Sabby's stuff, and I hope you enjoyed our conversation today. We'll be back on Thursday with the headline show. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy, she says meow, and I say peace, love, and a general strike. See y'all next time.